Don't try to make yourself remember, darling. Don't look for me, I'm just a story you've been told. So let's pretend a little longer, 'cause when we're gone, everything goes on. You were staring at the window, and I said, I wanna take you to the sea. And when I'm better, we'll do everything. I gotta stop making promises I can't keep. But if I was gone tomorrow, won't the waves crash on? Is it selfish that I'm happy as we pass the setting sun? Someday I'll be overcast, but you won't have to cry, 'cause we'll do the grieving while I'm by your side. I said, don't try to make yourself remember, darling. Don't look for me, I'm just a story you've been told. So let's pretend a little longer, 'cause when we're gone, everything goes on. And I'm so scared of getting used to this. All the vines that keep you tethered in your room. Well, someday both of us are leaving here, but for now I'll just bring this sea to you. Will you meet me in the daylight like we did before? Then I felt you on my shoulder, and you weren't suffering anymore. You said, I'm sorry that you worried, but don't apologize. I told you to forget me, but you stayed by my side when I said, don't try to make yourself remember, darling. Don't look for me, I'm just a story you've been told. So let's pretend a little longer, and when we're gone, everything goes on.
Like a bomb squad.
To Aegis, everybody. We have got week 3 of the group stage, and this is the final week. So everything that is going to be happening for almost all the teams playing is going to be decisive, and it's going to matter. Some of the teams, their end will be today. Some of the teams get a rest next week because they don't need to play in the play-ins. I'm joined by Eniamore. It's a pleasure to be here again. How are we feeling today?
Oh, you know it. I'm always excited to be on, the Aegis casting disc, and we also have exciting matches today. For the first round, we do actually have a new up and comer team, Froggy Esports, versus I would say maybe a team that might finally get into playoffs, hopefully, which is Lunatic Fringe. I think the team as the people champs because they really have a tough time and they're always around and maybe this is finally their time to have a taste of playoffs with play-ins coming in for next week.
I'm actually super excited to watching their set just because we are going to be following a man known as Mr. Frogman. And anyone who has that username is a Giga Chat. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
For sure. And Frogman kind of struck me in the community as someone who want to kind of get things done. If you don't really know how this team came about, it was through a looking for, players channel. And he basically just laid it down like, hey, I want people on my team. I'm gonna, try and win it for the peeps. And this might not be the most commemorative, the most memorable team, but they're gonna come out swinging. And I know at least one person on the team called Andres who, has some, decent, not success, I wouldn't say over success, but has some competitive integrity in the Legends of Runeterra. And yeah, I'm just excited to see them play.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited to watch the set. It's been a while since I've seen some very good LOR, and the Aegis League always provides that. Now, I do want to say that this league is brought to you by Community Gaming, who do you want to talk about Community Gaming a little bit, Annie?
Yeah, so community gaming is a all-in-one platform that kind of helps grassroots, be be supported and basically if it wasn't because of them a lot of tournaments wouldn't be sponsored and wouldn't be able to uh, really flourish and just have that prize pool that you need to really make a tournament happen and get people playing in it.
Yeah, so as I said, the Aegis Esports Glory in Navori is brought to you in part by Community Gaming. It is an all-in-one tournament platform that helps supercharge events of all levels, from community grassroots to tier 1 professional events. Experience it for yourself and start playing and earning at communitygaming.io today. And yes, we are very grateful to their support for the Aegis team.
And just before we get into the game hash, I want to bring up the elephant in the room. What's going on with these sunglasses? This is like Mad John Wick vibes.
Bro, I did this for the money match that was happening a couple of days ago between Mastering Runeterra and Red Pop Games, and I thought it was really funny. And then Yang Zera decided to tweet the picture without my permission, and it blew up. So I'm just what's the term? I'm just playing along with the thing, you know. People are enjoying it, so I will just provide the content.
Well, it is quite the content. I mean, I don't know. I'm just stunned right now. I'm just looking at hash and it's like, yeah, that's wild. But what is also wild is not
Oh,
Frogman's
absolutely.
deck because he's bringing something pretty normalized that we've seen in the past week, and that is Avali Jarvan.
Yeah, so this is a deck that's been around, and we had to cast it 3 times this last week, I think. So it was pretty popular. And ever since then it's only gone up in popularity, really. It hasn't stopped being a deck in the meta. And the one thing that I am interested about is the fact that the deck lists haven't changed much by 1 to 2 cards maximum. So not a lot of evolution from that side, but the deck itself has proven itself to be a strong contender in the meta. And I'm very interested to see how it performs, because the longer a deck exists, the more likely it is that people have a preparation strategy for it.
Yep, and then it also kind of adds more refinement to the deck as well, so it kind of goes hand in hand. But this list feels pretty refined. We see a lot of people on similar lists, really going for this idea of just yeah, I'm gonna be basically snowballing out, and then later in the game, I will be slamming down my Naka Kaburis, and then going into maybe a Catalysm turn and just ending it out. And looking at this, it's just super standard. Who's Riptide Sermon? is slightly being a bit more pushed because they feel like they need some type of presence with like removing into. It basically helps your hands, is what I'm saying. But outside of that, yeah, it's just as standard as you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. We see the good domestic cards like Petrosat Broadwing, blocking Badger Bear. It's, I guess, really interesting to talk about how, like, intuitively, a lot of people might think that, like, Vayne is a better pairing for Alawi, but it seems that the community and the stats have decided that Jarvan is just simply better because it gives you a little bit of more top end. It plays better in hands without Alawi, which I'm sure if you guys have heard the cast in the previous weeks, you know that I have always complained about how this deck is extremely reliant on her. So it makes sense. It makes sense. And yeah, the tentacle package is really strong. Moving on, we have Karma set, but we have the Targon Splash. I know you're a bit of a control coper, Annie, so talk a little bit about this deck.
Yeah. So a lot of the reason why people are on this Targon version just because it's slightly better into stuff like Master. TNZ really struggles to kind of, keep up with things like Defector. So you go, hey, I'm going to be running Sunburst. I'm going to be absolutely chilling in the mid game, and it also kind of what's the word? Simultaneously deals with Alawi, which is being popped up a lot, and you can kind of really just manage the mid game a lot more reliably, unlike PNZ can, especially with these tools like Sunburst.
Yeah, the hard removal is definitely something that this deck like has a lot of access to, which like can help. I think also like Falling Star is a very underrated card. Like even during the last patch, like it was one of the first things I saw as a potential answer to Samira, and I didn't see it being experimented with as much as I expected it. Obviously, a little bit of that is a symptom of Targon being a bad region, and another symptom of it is the fact that this deck existed, Samira Varus, and it didn't really care about Falling Star because it had infinite buffs. This deck is still around. It's holding its own weight in the meta, not doing quite as well as it used to do because the nerfs were obviously very impactful. I actually think in hindsight, the all-out nerf in a way was a little more impactful than the momentous choice nerf, but both of them have been uh, doing a good job at decreasing the power level of this deck, making it a lot fairer. And yeah, it's still very decent, and it still allows you to win whenever you need it to win against the decks that lose to like combo decks in general. But it's a lot more fragile now.
It is. You kind of have to play it more slowly, and Frogman is on a list that not much people are on. Like, this is kind of packed with some interesting cards here. Heedless, doesn't really see much play, and then Unforgiving Cold as a 2 of. I'm assuming, like, he's probably wanting to get into the mirror here, and that's why Unforgiving Cold is played. Not maybe the best, but we follow into the next team here with Lunatic Fringe as the opponents. And look, this is a quote unquote Drizov power bringing here, and it's definitely got some legs. Hash, you probably want to talk about this, especially because you're Drizov build.
I don't think Dressoth would be happy if you call this a Dressoth pal because there's two copies of Treasure Trash. But regardless, it is a deck that had spawned from him, and this deck does a really good job at just having a broad main and 8 cards in hand for like 10 turns in a row, and it just says, "I will not win the game, but you will lose." And when that works, you win, and when that doesn't, you lose. It has some very good tools. The deck existed before rotation with Ravenous Flock, but now it's a more of a pirouette deck. You lose the Poke Stick, you have the Pythos, so it's still okay. The trade-offs are there. Moving on, we have the Talia Malphite. This deck is also like one of the decks people expected would be like pretty popular going into this patch because it was quite good last patch and then it didn't get nerfed, but it hasn't been performing up to the standard that people expected.
Yeah, I think this deck is really clunky. Like, sure, it has some legs, but the thing is, you lose out on a lot of tools post rotation, and your whole game plan is almost fall into this like weird full pseudo, you know, archetype almost, and it's really weird. Like you're just clunky throughout the mid game, and if you're smart about it, and like you're playing like something like Samara Varus, you can really just play around Desert Jewel, and they can't do much. So it's more like targeting into certain control aspects and maybe more mid range stuff. But we hit another Alawi Jarvan, something really popular nowadays, and similar list, but without the heavy metal and only running a Riptide Sermon as a one off.
Yeah, made me go check the deck stats for this week. And there are 19 occurrences of Alawi Jarvan across the entire league this week, which it's I think it's the seventh most popular deck this week, which I guess makes sense. You would see it in both of these lineups, so you would expect it to be a little higher. But yeah, like we already went through this deck. It's pretty popular. It's doing something pretty powerful. Let's move on to the bans. What do you think is the bans are going to be, Annie?
So I honestly I'm not too sure about the Alawi Jarvan matchups just because I kind of fray away from Demacia. But in general, looking at this, you might be banning Talia Malphite as it's hard. Maybe okay. I was gonna say Talia Malphite, but maybe you do just ban the control deck. Like I feel like the control deck, as in the Noxus Bandle Broadbane, is actually has a lot of exploitability, and they do ban it though. Uh, like it's understandable because even though it has some way to exploit, there is just the constant, way
Okay,
of I got to deal with this, and it gets somewhat frustrating. And we see the ban on Lunatic Fringe's side just taking away the set karma here.
no, this makes sense. This makes sense. So I think what happened is, Frogman decided to ban Narnora because they should know that Karma Set is always getting banned. Because if your lineup has Narnora in it, I don't think you have the luxury to keep up Karma and hope that like the deck still gets banned. Because that matchup is like really abysmal. So you do this, and then when that happens, like when Frogman knows that their Karma Set is getting banned, you just ban Narnora because your other because now you're just playing a bunch of like even matchups, whereas Narnora is beating both of the two decks, Ilawi and Samira Varus. So I think these bans make sense.
Yeah, 100%. Like especially because you do have that Alawi on your side of like on Cleansix side, and the karma set kind of not praise on that, but it's pretty decent into that. You can just kind of understand that karma needs to be banned, and like it just helps you abandon that state. Then like, oh yeah, I just get rid of the Nora, because that means like I've got Alawi, which is probably a bad matchup into it, and Varus. Like Varus can win it, if you play pretty well, but if you just have a boatload of removal, it gets somewhat frustrating, and if you're not patient enough, you're definitely going to have a tough time trying to win a game of it.
Absolutely, I think these are all very reasonable points that you bring up, Annie, and I do really enjoy talking about the ban phase. I think it's one of the most interesting parts of this game. Like I think in this scenario, it's a little more straightforward, but there are cases where it's really, really interesting to dive into ban theory and figure out what you're supposed to be doing. Regardless, I'm really excited to see how the sets go because these are all like board-based decks, and I really enjoy seeing how they interact with each other. Hopefully, we don't get to see an Alawi mirror. That one is gonna probably be a little miserable to watch and pretty funny to cast, but we'll see what the players queue up.
Yeah, like thinking about the mirror right now, it's just what get the biggest tentacle and you win. Like, is there any really other play to it?
It's like there's like a couple of checks. So there's the Watchful Idol check, and then there's the Alawi check, and then there's the Jarvan check. That's kind of how it goes. And obviously, whoever has token on evens is like reasonably favored because both of your champions are on evens. Um, so like, it's not that there isn't a lot of decision making to it. There is obviously because like metas are complicated to navigate. It's just also that like when there is a big discrepancy in the hand quality, it's really hard for the player with the worst hand to crawl back, especially in a deck that's so like not so, but rather like not as consistent as an ideal Legends of Runeterra deck should be. in the form of Ilaoi, it gets harder because you become like more polarized in the early game, right? You either like draw everything, no, you either like draw enough early game or you draw none at all.
Yeah, it basically makes like mirrors like this basically comes down to like specific hands because of the natural occurrence of uh how reliable or reliant it has to be on a certain card, and that card is Alawi and Tentacles. So if you don't really have that and your opponent does, they kind of run with the game. But then
Yeah,
again, like there is some like crazy stuff you can pull out from it, but that generally is how it goes.
yeah, like I mean, if you start with a big early tentacle and your opponent doesn't, and like they have Ilaoi, you can still like play a tentacle smash on it when it comes down, and then like you are ahead. But like the matchup is like, oh, here we go. We're gonna find out how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we can't call it right now. Like Javan's fine, but you probably don't keep it in your hand. Like it's probably just a bit slow here, and Conte actually holds the form up interesting. I guess it helps some mid game exchanges there, but this is probably you want to be finding more specific cards, and Frogman just holds loyal Badger Bear here. I don't really see the relevance besides it being a 4/4.
Yeah, so I understand the idea behind keeping form up because I think the idea is that at some point during this match, there's going to be a combat trick war and you're going to need to win it to win the match. The problem with that is that your hand didn't have enough early game. It didn't have enough of like the early spawn units. And to contrast that, Mr. Frogman has a start with a Watchful Idol, albeit not a card they kept, but they have more resources to generate a tentacle. And when a tentacle becomes big in this matchup, it becomes really hard to deal with it, especially if your opponent does it before you do.
Yeah, and right now it just looks like that might be the case here. Kuntik throws up a pass. That's like, it's entertaining to kind of pass back here. Like, I feel like there's some merit to it. You know, they can't really develop, and then if they play into a alley, you have plays like you do have Tentacle Smash, and you can actually kill off, albeit without a form up in hand, you could kill off the future side. So there's quite a few things here, and the pass is entertaining, but we'll see from Kuntik what they'll do.
Is the idea of this pass to hold up Ilaoi plus Cataclysm next turn so that you can Cataclysm and go after the tentacle while also generating 2 spawns, and that way you are ahead in the tentacle race, especially with the 5 drop coming down on turn 5. Maybe that's the thought process behind this pass. And like I don't know if it's correct because I'm not that experienced in the Ilaoi mirror, but I would assume that's the reasoning behind it. We elect to
Oh,
play the Sea's voice anyway after the attack, which doesn't allow the line I was mentioning. But it's also a reasonable decision to make because you need to catch up on the procs of the tentacle, right?
yeah, and this is kind of sad though because Kuntik did hold that form up for a reason now, and it won't be available. Like this Tentacle Smash has so much potential value that you're going to be value trading, and not only that, but it gets really awkward for actual potential trades because you can't even attack with the Lowy in that case due to Frogman's heavy metal. Of course, Quintic doesn't know that, but if that does become a result of what might happen, it's just like super favorable for Frogman.
Yeah, and if the Alawi comes down here, this Sermon top deck was pretty good, no? Like you're just going to Sermon the Sea's voice and it's gonna make it so that the tentacle can't be destroyed by the Broadwing, and you will have to sack it to play into the to swing with the Alawi. So we see the open attack coming instead. What do you think about this open attack? I don't actually know if this makes sense.
I think that's fine. I really feel like Quintic is maybe just like going off, I need to keep form up in my hand and just always maybe make it as a threat just on the base of Mulligan. But it really
Mhm.
makes stuff weird if you're trying to play for that because the only time you could like really keep the form up to always be around was that last turn, and we opted for that C's place instead. Wow, a pass from Kuntik.
Yeah, this is I would say this is a pretty good spot for Frogman to be in. The only thing that's missing is your actual tools to win the game, so like the Alawi. But we have this 5 drop and we have a tentacle slam to deal with one of your opponent's threats. So it's not a bad start. Ooh, I don't know about swinging with the tentacle. I think you need to be really careful about making sure that it's healthy. I understand the idea behind the eye. The
Okay,
form up
well,
draw. The form up draw is good because if you don't draw form up, I don't think you're allowed to swing with the tentacle.
yeah, I definitely agree. All you really want to do is just keep this tentacle, healthy as possible, and that form up does become something else. It makes this opportunity to swing just super reliable for Frogman, and Quintic literally doesn't do anything here. Can't do much besides block, but opts not to, and that's a boatload of damage. 9, making it already down to 7 for Quintic in the leading turn for what is looking kind of scary.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Quintek needs to draw Jarvan here because if you don't draw Jarvan, you're just gonna play one. You're just gonna play a threat into the Tentacle Slam, which we are playing right now. So I guess this kind of makes sense, right? Because this technically plays around Jarvan because it kills the tentacle, so that it still slows your opponent down even when the Jarvan comes down and pulls your own tentacle. So then both of you have your stacks of spawn reset.
Yeah, I think it's fine because I feel like the only way that Quintic's kind of getting back into this game or trying to find some leeway to get tentacles back online is through this Elka or I'm forgetting its name, but it's like the 4-3, and it makes sense. Surely you don't really have that potential to kill the alley now, but you do run into stuff like form up, and we have to keep this alley in our hand. It doesn't feel great, and we're really just trying to catch on our losses from early on and just trying to get some form of tentacle back onto the board.
This makes a lot of sense. And here we see the sermon come down, and this is not that back breaking. This form up that we kept in the mulligan is going to get used here, I imagine, because there is not like if you let this resolve, sermon spawns 3, right? So you can't form up and pull that tentacle and kill it. Yeah.
Pretty much. Like, you're so fine here. This 10-7 now just makes everything awkward. You can get a swing in and maybe deal, 8, but that doesn't feel good because now you just lost your board.
I mean, you can pretend that this Broadwing is a flame chomper. So you pull the tentacle to the side, you swing. But if you swing with the tentacle, you block the tentacle, and then the stack is reset again. So you have to swing like this. And this swing is not that good because you're just going to block and you're going to take 4. And you are ahead in this position by a significant margin, I think. Obviously, there's no removal for the Ilawi in Quintek's hand. And there are a bunch of cataclysms there. So there is potential to find some lethal here down the line, maybe. If I was about to say if Frogman doesn't draw into an Ilawi, but there it is.
Exactly. And it's slightly nice for this 4-3 to get some, protection on the tentacle because Jarvan wasn't really an impactful threat, but I'm sorry, Jarvan would have been an impactful threat, but this Alawi changes everything. This should actually just be lethal here. There's nothing that Quintic can do. I guess you can actually play the Catalysm, actually. So there is actually a line where you're somewhat safe, and I wish I could say it's lethal, but this might actually bring Quintic back into the game ever so slightly.
So my question
no.
here... Wait, oh no? Is there something wrong with what you said?
No. Well, I mean, you can play C voice and block, but I was thinking maybe you could push damage. No.
I think
it's not lethal yet.
I think the Cataclysm is pretty forced here. My question is, though, did Frogman need to play the heavy metal? Because if you don't play the heavy metal, you have form up. And if you have form up into this Cataclysm, you're safe.
Yeah, it's not really, you don't really have much to do besides Cataclysm there. Are we just dead?
Yeah, I guess we elect not Cataclysm, which is I'm
just
not the
die?
best mathematician, but you are just dead. Yes. So we'll see Frogman take this game, despite Kuntek having a clear way to delay the lethal for a little bit. Um,
Contact literally just went, hey, you know what? I'm gonna, die and also just like lose my only way to win the game with a rally that I never played. Like, okay, sure.
yeah, some good friends of mine would call that line interesting. My good friend Alan ZQ would call it experimental. I would call it Giga Chat. We just go to the next game and 2-1 our opponents.
Right. And yeah, that game was kind of interesting. There was like a point of maybe swinging back into Quintek's favor from, the early turns being very heavy for Frogman. But outside of that, Quintek kind of lost that chance with just not cataclysming and trying to make it get back into their favor. And that just wasn't the case because they just didn't see the line. But we are into the next game with Samara Varus. And how does this matchup go, Hash? I've got some idea, but probably best if you break it down.
I was under the impression during the last patch that this deck, that Samira Varus, was faring pretty favorably into Ilawi Jarvan. I don't remember what the stats said back then, so I'm not sure if that was right or wrong. It was just my perception of the matchup. I think nowadays it's supposed to be favored for Ilawi Jarvan, at least on stats. But I'm not sure how true that is, and I haven't really played much of the Samira Virus deck since the nerfs to confirm this. Um,
Yeah.
I think in theory it would make sense for this matchup to be pretty close because even though the Samira Varus deck has the Varus region tools like the freeze, which helps a lot with delaying the kills from Ilawi, at the same time the threat density that the Ilawi deck provides and the amount of blockers with high HP that it has also mean that Samira Varus needs a lot of time to generate a big, impactful lethal. Um, so I
Right.
think it's pretty even.
Yeah, so like I've definitely played this matchup quite a bit, and I'm somewhat biased because I think Samira is favored, but you have to play Samira in a way where you know she's gonna live, and it means you can't really play her early, and you have to have kind of expanse because this tentacle smash is your biggest worry here, and if you can kind of navigate through that, you're in a very nice spot because they'll be like, oh, okay, I've put all my resources in this, and then you're probably gonna like challenge and maybe kill one of my stuff off. And Frogman just going straight up with a flare, just having all this other stuff in the backup, and just like playing it slow while still playing that Samara somewhat early.
It's quite funny looking at both of the players' hands because Frogman is missing equipment, which is one of the issues that Samira Varus runs into, which is if you don't draw an early equipment, your deck becomes a lot slower. And Quintek is just having an Alawi moment out here. Every card in his hand is 6 mana.
Everything isn't you really what you want. Like you want that snowball of tentacles, and they just can't do anything. And that pass goes up just because, like, what are you gonna do? So Sermon here, being the only thing they really can do, and Frogman's got some options. You can maybe be a bit cheeky and like play this Noxian Telstones, but you do lose out on a few things. And Frogman just says, "Hey, I'm gonna lose it," and that's not great. That's a main reason why you don't play Samira early, because she's a main reason why you win. And now you're just waiting for a card. You're waiting for another Samira. Otherwise, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. We do top deck the Bakai, which is maybe the best draw, maybe the worst draw. It depends on what we predict. So let's find out.
It depends if your name's the cup is mine, and only care if someone plays it on turn one, so you blame them on Twitter.
Yeah. Okay, so we do see the Varus. This Varus is probably going to get picked up, right? It's like too high value not to.
I honestly, I would go for the unending wave, but like we don't have a weapon, so
Yeah, it's a 4 mana
has to
ending
be.
wave. I don't think so. Yeah.
Like there was that a pick on the needing wave?
I think so.
Unless-
I think so. It's hard to tell through the perspective of the player, but I feel like they clicked on it. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it really felt like that. But I'm just thinking about how this game's going, and I feel like you could have changed things differently a lot earlier, and it all comes down to that Varus. But Frogman trying to have some capability with the cards that they have in the hand, and really playing for anything here. And this Discord doesn't even feel right either. Like, man, this is not a great position for Frogman.
Yeah, I mean, I think they picked on ending wave. If there was a Varus on top, this Frogman's life would have been way easier. Regardless, though, I do want to say, I really like their usage of Sharpened Resolve that turn, because you know that your opponent is light on early units because of how the early game went, and you're gonna need to kill this tentacle to set them back a little bit, especially when your hand isn't doing exactly what you want it to be doing. So I see the long term plan. Like, we're gonna play this ambitious cultist probably and chomp down on 7 and then play on ending wave on 8. That's probably ideally how we want to go. And then hopefully by then we have an equipment so that we can do stuff. But it's still not great. And I still think I would have preferred the Varus in this position in hindsight. But I get why this decision was made by Frogman.
Yeah, it's like you're really just gonna play for another idea of how to win, especially because you've lost some key cards. So they're really just playing for the board, and how do you kind of neutralize the opponent as much as possible? And that's basically what you're saying, and what I'm kind of echoing here, and really just trying to gain a tiny bit of an inch as possible and get the swing here, but couldn't take the threat of a hand, and with this single combat as well, always going to be there, is kind of scary. And we even pick up the Lowry for maybe some potential damage, but I don't mind just going all out with this Jarvan swing.
Can we talk about how this is the greatest hookmaster of all time? I guess it's not anymore, but it would have been really funny if Ilawi was developed and we played hookmaster and we got an equipment and we drew 2 cards because it activates ambitious cultist. Sadly, we won't be seeing that. We will just be seeing this instead. And I do think like it makes sense to not be playing the Ilawi, just trying to remove the units, because you know that your opponent doesn't have a good hand here from QuickTech side because of how the game has been going. And conversely, I also really like the usage of this all out for a very similar reason why I like the sharpened resolve the turn before. It makes a lot of sense. You're just trying to delay your opponent's game plan while you draw into your own pieces. The single combat also makes sense. It's just a lot about preserving this tentacle, especially when there's an allowing in your hand. So yeah, I think all of the actions taken this turn make sense.
So, okay, if I was Frogman, how am I really winning? I guess I have to really hope that this unneeding wave hits Samira. Like, that feels like my only real chance.
Samira even enough?
I mean, so Samira flips, but it doesn't do much either. So
Yeah,
I
there
guess
is
you
the
would have.
inevitability of the Alawi cards, right? The inevitability of the Alawi and the Cataclysm, and like even if you draw into your Samira, you need to draw into more of your defensive cards because this Furious Wielder, while being a good card, is not going to be good enough in this spot, I don't think. So this Unending Wave needs to do a lot of work. You might even have to play it next turn to draw into freeze and use it on your opponent's turn.
Right, and that is actually something that is different in this list here, but Frogman opts to play it now, and these are not the hits. You have Colossus, which sure gives you another unit, but a fleeting Varus only can save you so much, and sure, it might kill off the Jarvan, but outside of that, it's just threat after threat. We have Alawi coming down, and even with Cataclysm, it's not looking good for Frogman, and this has been kind of what's been going on for the past few turns now. Just trying to do all they can really do, and yeah, tries to play for it, plays for this trade off. But even then, like, we can just now play Nakakuburos and be fine that way.
Yeah, this is not looking good at all for Mr. Frogman. Unfortunately, this looks like it will be going to a game 3, but this this makes perfect sense, right? I think we just played our Samir a little bit too early. We maybe should have predicted the Varus instead of the Unending Wave, and things would have gone a little bit differently. Regardless, though, the hands from both sides weren't that great because there was no equipment on one side, and the other had a hand full of clunky cards. But it is going to be Alawi that prevails in the end. Maybe we don't see a lethal quite yet, depending on some draws, but I imagine this will be a position that's very hard to come back from.
Well, we have double Nakakabura, so it makes it 3 to 5 plus a form up. You could
The form-up is
actually.
good.
I see no obstacles ahead.
So let's just say they didn't have Furious Wielder here. You'd like do all that Nakakaburas into form up. That would be 6-8. The Alali would be also 10. This would technically be lethal, but obviously Furious is here, and we'll trying to challenge this Alali, but I don't think that will get through. You can't really buff it all the way to 8 health unless you hit the Varus champ spell.
Yeah, you're gonna need to commit a bunch of cards here. I guess you can do it if you play Spell Shield plus Flare plus Wielder. That gets there, but that's not great. You don't want to be doing that. It sacks your entire hand. You're left with nothing. So even if it resolves, it's not great. And we know from looking at Quintek's hand, it's not going to regardless.
So you can actually kill it though. Like you can go Varus champ spell and then also play it through form up because it does give you +1 with the additional Varus
True.
draw. The only problem is your hand is actually just nothing.
Yeah. I guess technically you can survive here, but it's not. It's ugly. Very ugly.
The only real funny thing is you don't have units for that Cataclysm to actually be a threat, but Frogman opts out to be slightly more safe about it. Doesn't really want to be overly impactful with these cards, and even then, like, this is still pushing 6. We still have the Alali on the board, and we have that Cataclysm. So if they literally play another unit, it should be game because you buff up Alali again, and that's 10 onto a free fall. But the spell shield is a possibility, so I guess you have some leverage to maybe be okay.
The spell shield doesn't cancel the Cataclysm. It just makes it so that the unit starts a free attack without challenging anything. So it doesn't actually stop anything.
Right, my knowledge is somewhat lacking, but if that is the case, then I'm pretty sure this is lethal. You have to play a card sometime. You can be a bit more lenient with it, but gives them the opportunity to Cataclysm now, and this is literally exact lethal. The Cataclysm does go through. Do we have a Cataclysm? Where am I tripping?
Wait, it was a Jarvan's Cataclysm.
Oh my goodness. Okay. It changes the game. All right. I thought I was losing my brain cells for a second. Okay. No, I need some sleep or something because.
Wait, if that was a Jarvan's Cataclysm, then we were supposed to play double I before open attacking, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. There's like a lot of weird stuff going on that it makes plays like suspectable and just like falling into a trap here, but Frogman, does this give Frogman an opportunity? Probably not. I mean, can we buff it up to a point where we can maybe deal, it would have to be 17? And that seems unrealistic.
We don't. So I'm not sure how far the Varus is from a level up. But I would find it pretty unrealistic to get there. But it might be close. So yeah, it's at 6 out of 7. If we play it, it gets to 7. It flips, it goes up to, let's see how much attack. I think it goes up to 8, maybe 9. I think it goes up to 9, right? Yeah, it goes up to 9. We need to do 17 over this Alawi, and even then there is a form up. So yeah, this is nowhere near, right? Yeah. You can play the flare and it goes to 14, but that's not enough.
Yeah. And Quintek literally just you'd pass there and just play as much cards as you want, and then swing with Jarvan, and there
Exactly.
won't really be a way to do anything. The Furious Wielder as a top deck does nothing because you just overpower them with all your units, and this will be game. Kind of a weird game, right? Like we thought maybe it was over with the Cataclysm, and then we forgot that it was actually second Jarvan. And then those exchanges were really weird too. But I mean, like I guess in Quintek's spot, they can play it slow, and that's what they're doing at the moment. And Nakagaburos just plays down onto the field, and you still have probably any time of capability to win this, and it should slightly just be over for Frogman now going into game 3.
Yeah, I would like to think this game is over, and we see the Jarvan come down, and there are no responses. The Jarvan flips and screams for Demacia, and with that being said, the Lawi no longer needs to be played from either side because the deck won from both players, and we will move on to is it Talia Malphite versus Samira Varus, if I remember correctly.
It will be the case that are the bans. The bans were, the other decks of Karmaset and Norana. So we will see Talia Malphite, a new occurrence of it and a new iteration from post rotation, and it's a pretty interesting card. Like, not card, sorry, archetype. And I'm definitely happy to see if it can kind of pull for a win because I know Samira Varus kind of likes playing into it because all you really need to do is just go, oh, they have Desert Drill. Let me just play around that, and then you do kind of a lot in the mid game, and they're kind of sad about it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Samira game plan is super hard to interact with. Like there are cards like, as you said, Desert Duel and Quicksand, but like as long as Frogman acts like these cards are real, he's going to be okay.
Right. We do see these mulligans here, and I'm pretty sure that is a.
Oh no, it's a Bakai on one. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh no. Even Quintek's sad about it. They're like, oh no, you should have back-eyed me on one. I know you're not playing it right. And I'm gonna lose now. Lose the unoptimal players. Oh no.
Nah, it's okay. It's okay. We Bakai'd into a Bakai, right? No, that's not what we did. Okay. So I guess the big difference between last game and this game is that we do have the early equipment, which is going to be really important down the line, regardless of how this game goes. It's a pretty good thing for Frogman. Also, the fact that this gets vulnerable is really funny because it just gives your opponent the equipment back, which is sometimes a good thing.
And Quintek knows as well. It's like, wait, why am I trying to kill this?
Yeah, it's not exactly a good idea to kill a ceaseless sentry, basically. Just draws one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, that's the thing with weapons, right? They're like weird pseudo value where you just realize, oh, I can't really do trades like this anymore because they can just replay it and they basically have the same unit on board. And that makes stuff awkward, but you trade down anyway, so hello?
It seems that we are trying to protect our stuff from taking too much damage, I suppose. But this doesn't change too much.
Isn't the Bakata just the same? Like,
Yeah, it is.
and then you just chuck it on?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure what was going on there. I do want to say though, this Rockbear Shepherd card is really good, dude. It's really good.
Oh, yeah, just slightly. It doesn't just like accelerate majority of your landmarks, especially if you have multiple on site. Doesn't do that at all.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the hand from Quintek isn't ideal. There are these spells, and we might have to play them proactively, to be honest.
And like that is the problem with this deck. Like it does become clunky. You don't have the consistency of it being relatively, strong and constantly just putting pressure on it. Especially if you top deck Talia with no landmark and Frogman now trying to get some, way to kind of steer this game into their favor. And let me tell you, having this backup with the expanse is nice for a second, but this quicksand should maybe be on the backhand if this is what they are going for.
I don't even know if Quicksand is where you want to be. This Varus is a naturally drawn one, so you're gonna draw into another one eventually anyway. Maybe it's better to use your Quicksand when that happens.
There's also another play there as well, and you can just simply momentous, but it does lose the pale. Like the thing with that is you pseudo keep it alive and maybe keep the expense later on for that second Varus like we're talking about, and it runs better into like Celestial Wonder. But
I think the thing is though, you don't want Quintek to play pale because you know their hand is clunky. So you don't want to like. I don't even like the swing because the swing gives them. I guess it's fine because the landmark counts down immediately, so it's fine. But like
but we play into the pale. Like
no,
if
but
that was the
playing
reason
into
for
the
the
spell is
pale,
fine. Playing into the spell is fine though, right? Because there is no mana, so if you draw into a landmark, you can't actually do the landmark plus the Lee, I think. So it's okay.
yeah, it helps your hand a bit, but like talking about helping your hand, this does do that. It gets some way of this game actually being, coherent for Quintek, because like Quintek's just been in a lost of like rubble basically, just trying to find anything, and that will be something to kind of lead it with. And Frogman, you have to kind of get this Varus back on board as well. So I would probably actively just play this Discord, but takes the 5, just ignores anything of like maybe drawing another Varus.
Ooh, we're playing a bunch of poros. I see.
Okay,
Did we hope to
why
hit
does
the
that
challenge?
help? Ash,
Like
tell me, how does this help?
I don't get it. If you had a Samira, this would be really funny because she just flips. But
Yeah, like Porous Sewers is actually such a good card with Samira, but we need to play for Varus here, and like we had the opportunity to just kill their 5-1 and just draw it.
yeah, have a little bit of time. Okay, we're
Wait,
doing this now.
why are we doing this
Wait,
now?
what's going on?
We just take 5 damage, Frogman. Surely.
Who let Frogman cook?
Frogman's cooking too much. He's too cooked.
This is a banger. Oh my god! And we played the chip, so now the landmark pops, and we can't double it. What is going on?
Why is this a fiesta? Where's my competitive integrity across these games? Why? all
I love
all we said, Hash, was trying to make this game look appealing, and they actually finally get there, and they go, nope. Nope, I'm gonna take 5, and then this way of me trying to get Talia good. Nope.
What an absolute banger of a match, bro. This is so fun to watch, honestly. I love this. I love this.
Alright, surely we drew Varus, because we just like, played it after taking the 5. So there's some leeway here, and like, Quintek also kind of got lucky and found that other assault spire. So it was all planned. They knew what they were doing.
Looking at the players' hands, this game is still gonna go for like maybe 3 to 4 more turns. I would still say Quintek is like. Actually, is Quintek favored from this position? I'm not sure.
I think so. Okay, like Frogman has the Coles here, which gives them time as well. So it like I think it actually might be Frogman's favorability late. That's only because like 1, now you have chump walkers, and 2, you might have a better chance of just OTKing just by looking at these hands.
Exactly. The OTK is what I'm worried about. It looks like okay, so using this all out here is bad for our OTK potential, right?
It is. I mean, like, trading down isn't too horrible though, but giving them a draw is, and like Quintek does find a predict which might change things.
We're using Momentous as well, so the OTK possibility has just gone down by quite a bit. We obviously still have this Lunari cultist to generate a bunch of procs, so the possibility of it happening is still existent. But I would have been a lot more content with like just taking the trades and playing freeze instead of like trying to remove the units and then trying to kill them on the crackback. But we opt for a different line here, which it might still work. It's still hard to say how this game is gonna go because, especially with these top decks, there's a Malphite and there's an unending wave as well. So
They are my people.
it can
Yeah,
still
like-
be back.
Theirs.
that momentous is also bad because like you have to really put yourself in a position like how am I going to win this, and it is through that Paris or a Samira, and you really like just playing a card for free, and Quintic does that somewhat with the Talia, gets Assault Spire back onto the board, and due to the 1-3 Shepherd kind of accelerating, it works in a chain and gets multiple of these out, and are we facing to a potential lethal if we didn't have this cold here?
I feel like we were just supposed to play the freeze and wielder. Did we have mana to play wielder plus freeze? We did, right? Yeah, we did. We did. So I feel like that was just supposed to be what we do, and then next turn we wave and try to look for a way to kill with Varus. But with this line, we will still be able to survive, I think. But the issue is that it's not going to be like we don't really have a way to apply the pressure we need to apply on the following turn. So that means so I think that means Quintek should be able to clutch this on turn 10, but we will see how it goes because like we've seen a lot of things happen this set, so anything is
Yeah, we've seen a lot of things happen, like literally just playing a needing here and then like going, oh, this is probably my best time to play these defensive spells, and now I'm gonna just put fleeting cards into my hand. It's kind of great, and Quintic literally just throws as much damage as they possibly can, besides the weak ones on the board, being somewhat, somewhat resilient of like respecting some trades. And here we go. The cold does come out, and I still feel like we don't want to be blocking because we want as much damage as possible for a win to play for it. Like,
yeah, just don't block
like,
with the Varus, bro. Just don't block with the
please?
Varus. Please. Please, please, please.
So, okay, we have +2 with another 2, that's 10. Then we have the level up, which is 11. Furious can't work because you just reset your stats. So, yeah, it's not. You can't actually do anything. Like, our top deck would be. What would our top deck be? Like, Momentous or maybe Samira into Flare?
I think it has to be Samira into Flare. Oh, I guess maybe like there is a line where you like give equipment to the Poro and then wielder the blocker with the Poro, but that doesn't work because there's too many high HP units. And there's also a rat negation, right? So yeah. Doesn't work. We'll see the attempt, but Varus is just not big enough, unfortunately. Like there is even an argument to just press OK when this 11 damage is being presented and just call it a day.
You really have to actually, yeah, like it's weird to even say like maybe you just don't swing. Like it's super weird because you might need that Furious Order just to survive now, because it's in a really weird game state where you actually have no like way to play to win. But saying that as well, like you just can't block through this, and then this Malphite will be played. The Furious Orders can't do anything, and you'll get the stun off. And unless you draw Expanse, and even if you do draw Expanse, it's probably over.
Yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic about the odds of Frogman getting out of this game with a W. It looks like Quintek is going to be able to kill his opponent on the following turn.
Surprised we actually finished this game.
We got there. Finally. Yeah. So Quintek taking his sweet time to decide whether to block or take the damage. I don't think it really matters what decision you take, but
no, it does matter. Everything matters now, right? They have to take their time. We don't want any silly business. Like this is the deciding factor. It's 4 play-ins, and we just went down to 3. I mean, like, sure. I guess it's fine. Like, it might be the most optimal line. It's just funny though, because like, what if,
I feel like it's maybe not optimal because aren't you just supposed to play Malphite here anyway?
Yeah, why are we not? And this isn't killing it. What? Why?
It's not doing what you think.
Why are we killing the 9 then? What's going on?
I guess we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna wielder the 9/9.
I would even just like probably take the pass, but we are like we're not open dead, are we? Nah, so we could theoretically take the pass and just hope that they don't have Malphite. And the
I'm a bit
Exalted
confused
Burrow.
I'm a bit confused why we didn't play the Malphite originally, to be honest.
Like, there's a lot of confusion in this game. But the Malphite finally comes down. This means you do have everything up with a potential of having a right and the 2 mana stun. And Frogman trying to just hold on to any like thing at all here gets this weirdo out, but even then we'd have to probably commit double here on the basis of this right, and this should probably be game. Like, you only can really block one thing, and if you block that one thing, you're still dealing 9, 11, 17 damage, assuming that they maybe block something else. But then, like, all in all, I'm 100% sure this is probably just the end of it here.
Are you 100% sure that it's probably? Because these words kind of conflict, Annie.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think so as well. It would. Let's see. How can Quintek miss lethal? What does he need to do?
I mean, anything's possible. We could probably do something that we're not aware about. Probably just like swing with the Malphite and not realize he is on board lethal. This is why I'm cautious. Like, my words were conflicting before because I'm scared of saying anything. I really don't want to just like say this is lethal and then they don't just give us lethal. Like, it could happen.
Yeah. This is Let's see.
I'm so
Let's see.
scared
This is
about
a
talking
mailbag.
about anything.
Okay. Yeah, we played
Okay.
Unstoppable Force. Good start. Good start.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay. I guess we play the power. Shall we?
Okay. I really respect Frogman not scooping here.
Well, there's a chance. Like, anything can go. But Quintek does actually put all the units on the stack, so for anything that might be a possibility is not it, and
There we go.
I do get the dub.
So Lunatic Fringe takes away this portion of this match, and there's a chance that that's very impactful for the group's standings, and probably puts Lunatic Fringe in a more advantageous spot to advance to the next round.
Yeah, and like that game was that was too much to handle. I'll be honest. I got to a point where I was just too scared of even casting because I didn't know what they were gonna do. Probably one of the best matches I've seen since Aegis, and sad that we can't see them play anymore. But we'll probably we don't really know the end result, so we might go into a break and hit round 2 unless we do.
Yeah, it seems like. Yeah, it seems like we are going to be heading to a break, right?
Yeah, for sure. Sweet. So yeah, we'll probably get the results for the whole team, and if who won out of that to maybe potentially push into play-ins, maybe after the break. But for now, we will be heading to that break. So stay around soon, and we will be right back.
But I might shoot you in your
Welcome back, everybody, and we are here with round two for Aegis Esports, Glory and Navori. And I want to say it off the bat. I'm glad we're getting into another round here and not repeating that round from the last set, because that was a doozy. I'll be honest. I was on the ropes the whole time, and I was freaking out. How do you feel, Hash?
Yeah, I mean, last set was very entertaining. This set is going to be a little bit of a different type of entertaining, but hopefully still very nice to watch. We've got two known players in the community, I think, one of which is Dr. Evander, playing for the Dusk Peddlers, and the other is Yang Zera, which I'm sure is a little more popular just because of how long he has been around and his prominence in the Brazilian community, playing for the Castaways. And I feel this is the appropriate time to bring this up since Yang Zera is a MetaFi coach. Um, MetaFi is an online platform that allows players to learn from and play with some of the best player in the world. They grant private one-on-one coaching sessions with elite coaches, people such as Yang Zera for Legends of Runeterra. You can choose him or any other coach in this game to book your first session in less than 3 minutes. And you can do that in real time and chat with them as soon as you can. I personally love the convenience of being able to select the right coach for the deck I want to practice. And if you want to play some control piles and pretend that they're good, Yang Zera is perfect for that. If you're interested in coaching from the top players in the world, try MetaFi today.
Yeah, and like Yang Zera is just kind of this person who just like loves control and will probably bring up any random pile that is just like value orientated and does good with it. Like has done amazing in the past with stuff like like Shadow Owls, Shelfer, Kindred, goes something like 13-0 and just says, yeah, I'm decent, I'm decent. But talking about being a bit more, heavy for what they are on a meta deck now, still control. It is the Targon Karma set here.
Yeah, we saw this deck last set. This is a similar-ish list. I think there's a little less units, and there's the introduction of the Targonian Telstones, which were buffed in the most recent expansion. I didn't ask. Sorry, not the expansion, the patch. I didn't ask you any when we went through this deck before. Have you played it this patch with the buffs?
No, I have not really played it. I've been trying to avoid Karma set in general and just like kind of abuse Samira Varus. Just
I
also
see.
because I feel like there's a lot more interesting kind of plays and just figuring out a way to specifically get around certain lines with Samira Varus is a lot more entertaining. But Karma set is a very entertaining deck at times, and even though there is a lot of linear plays, you can do some really crazy stuff. And like, there's even double set lines where you can kind of play set, level them up, get the showstopper, and replay it. So there are, even though it's linear, there's quite a few things here.
Yeah, moving on, we can see this Timo Tristana Nar Bilgewater. So we've kind of seen Tristana shine since the patch has come out and the Bandle Gunners buff has come into effect. But we've seen three different types of decks. We've seen that this Demacia one, the Noxus one, and there's this one, the Bilgewater one, which kind of abuses the King's Court, the Brash keyword, and the interactions with Prize Fight plus one of the pings, either Pythos and Group Shot. Also randomly turns Nar into a card that makes like 20 Pokesticks. What do you think of this deck?
Yeah, so out of the bunch, this kind of has the most interaction and the most kind of way to get around certain circumstances. And like, we were talking about Prize Fight kind of doing a few things, but one other thing is it's a pseudo decimate with Tristana. Or it could even scale, because what you do is you kind of attack with a Tristana, and when you Prize Fight, it goes with that impact, and you can kind of it doubles down, and it really makes it kind of good. And just allowing to have that with the interaction gives a lot of opportunities for this game to do a lot of things like this deck to do a lot of things in the game that the Noctis or the Blast Division just can't do.
Yeah, I've seen this deck do 18 damage impact in one game. Moving on, we have Samira Pantheon, and the first thing that struck me immediately when I saw this is the inclusion of Grave Physician. That's quite a spice. Is that overcooked? Any? Is it overcooked?
It might be cooked, but I don't hate it. Like I feel like you can get to a point where you might want to be drawing one of your certain cards, and like majority of your cards are decent. You know, you're hitting Samara or Pantheon most of the time, and if you don't, you might find Wandering Shepherd, and like that still has some leeway here. Like I think like this deck is very just all in on Samira or Pantheon, and if you don't find that with like maybe Furious Wielder, you have a tough time. And Young Zero just wants to kind of double down on that.
Yeah, just imagine the times where you're gonna play Grave Physician, and you're gonna draw into like a Lunari Cultist, and you will just hate yourself. But the card is a low floor, high ceiling, right? When it works out, it feels really good. Moving on to Dr. Evander's decks, we see Deep, which is a fan favorite. I think this is the most played deck in the game at the moment.
It's just like what's there not to love about the it's a very Yu-Gi-Oh-esque deck, and I feel like a lot of people kind of come from Yu-Gi-Oh all that background of like the pop culture aspect of it, and like kind of embodies that with just all these sea monsters, and it's quite a fun and explosive deck at the moment. Where the depths kind of enables that, and just being the reliably hit deep early makes it pretty decent, and you have a really nice time into stuff like mid-range decks. You can control at the moment.
Yeah, the play pattern is really fun, and just having a bunch of big dudes stare at you, and when you hover over them, they say you're deep, is really it makes me feel some type of way, you know. We have another iteration of Tristana. So this one is the champion strength list with the form up splash. We see one chain vest, and we also see the 3 combat cooks, which Bilgewater doesn't have access to. You give up a little bit of that flexibility with the prize fight interactions and the ability to have like really efficient removal, and just say I am this big like aggressive combo slanted deck, and I have a finisher that it's really really hard to interact with, because with almost no Ionia in the meta and Shurima kind of not being a region anymore after rotation, it's gotten a lot easier to resolve champion strength, and people forget the strength that this card has, no pun intended. In hindsight, it's really really crazy that it came out as an 8 mana card.
Yeah, like I feel like this is the most natural evolution of the Tristana Swarm deck, because like in general, I feel like if you're just playing a lot of Swarm, you kind of just want this idea of champion strength, and it only really took like a week later to actually people realize how good it was, and the only concern was the deny. But even though like Tamaset doesn't get played much, so it's a relatively decent deck, and we see now Dr. Evander likes the idea of decency and brings Aatrox, which has been kind of a staple for quite a while now.
Yeah, not only is the deck a staple, I feel like I've seen this 40 card list like a million times, like card for card. There's just no changes. Like it's been the same list for like a month now, and
Hey,
it's good old reliable Aatrox vein, right? Like it just does what it needs to do.
yeah, what's not broke, don't fix it, right? Like that's exactly what this deck is, and it hits that refinement point. But we are into this game, not game now, but the ban phase, and I first just want to kind of talk about Dr. Evander, because like I feel like we kind of just shot through a lot of that, and people might not actually know this player, and don't get fooled. Like this player is pretty decent, and even if he is facing Yang Zero, he's got quite a decent, like quite a bit of accolades. Has hit rank 1 and top of ladder super early in seasons, and that's quite a feat of himself. And I feel like it doesn't get the recognition because they don't follow it through. And right now, I feel like with these lists and having an idea of how to kind of do it, even with like Dust Petal's not doing great, they have a great chance into Yang Zero. And wow, we get a double ban here, both from the ban Organa standpoint. Hash, what do you think of this ban?
I understand the Yang Zeros ban, but I think Yang Zeros ban comes from a place of worrying about getting your own Tristana deck through in the mirror match. I don't know if Dr. Evander banned the right deck here. I think Samira Pantheon might have been your intended ban.
Hmm. I can see that because I feel like Deep would struggle with it, just off like an idea of early spell shields, and it's almost similar to elusive game plan in the sense like Deep doesn't really like high rolly stuff or like very uninteractive things, and that's what really Samira Varus can do. Samira Pantheon can do if it snowballs. But I guess you have some leeway still,
Issue I
maybe.
see here is like there is a you basically have put yourself in a position where it really depends on what decks get queued up first. And if you don't do that, like if you ban the Samira Pantheon instead, you have two decks in the form of Deep and Evane Aatrox, both of which beat that deck, the Tristana Bulgewater deck. So even if your opponent queues differently in the start, you can always rely on 2-0ing it. Now it's a little bit of a fork because we see this Deep versus Karma set matchup, and I know a lot of people thought that Deep was like favored into the PNZ iteration. I know most good players said it was even actually, and I think when it comes to the Targon version, it should be favored for the Targon version.
Yeah, you lose a lot of tools, and Deep has kind of been this control killer. Like that's kind of what it is. You make big boys very fast, and like what else do you really want? You can also have Maokai as a backup, and all they have to really do is pressure before turn 10, and Yang Zero is going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. That with all of this being said, this is like the exact type of hand that Dr. Evander wants, right? The jettison, the 2 copies of Sea Scarab, the additional value gained from Jaw Hunters, because it doesn't really matter what sea monster you generate off of it. It's a big unit into a control deck, so it's always going to be
Well,
good.
Win or lose, I'm
The
not only
lure,
that, but you also
yeah,
get Lure.
yeah. Would you look at that? This is very close to being hand sculpted and put on a golden plate for Dr. Evander. It's almost exactly what you want.
Wow, actually get another Sea Scarab. Okay, maybe we
Wow.
go double Sea Scarab then. Just like ignore this Lure, because this Lure doesn't really. It's not too impactful. I guess it might run into like a palm.
Yeah, we opt to go for the lure. I think it makes some amount of sense to go for the lure regardless, because also like um maybe the sea monster you draw changes the way that you want to play out your next turn, right?
Yeah, I can see that. Like, and I guess you don't actually have the obliterator fish on standby because like I can see maybe Yang Zero's only real option is to play set, and then now you have to kind of be comfortable with this idea of set going under under maybe the 4 health standpoint and just saying, hey, I hope they don't have
winter cold,
obliterator
black
fish. So
is
I actually do really like this play from Doctor Evander.
It's also worth noting that this game is gonna go a little long, and down the line there is a celestial. Isn't Celestial Impact? It's called Celestial Impact, right? The 7 mana
Yeah,
spell.
let's go.
Yeah, Celestial Impact is there to answer Nautilus at any given point, which is going to be a key point in this game, I think.
Right. I agree, but I feel like at the same time, with all these sea scarabs, you might just get a wide board with none of that really mattering.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Like Dr. Evander definitely has the type of hand that can get around that sort of like big removal, like Celestial Impact and Sunburst, which are like the reasons why this matchup isn't as good as people would think. Because traditionally, Deep should be like pretty good into control for the reasons of like just the deep keyword scaling really well into a deck that usually has a hard time dealing with big stats. But the existence of these like 3 copies of Sea Scares and our ability to just go deep really, really fast, especially with the Maokai drawn, we might just like end up flipping this Maokai and just snowballing control uncontrollably.
yeah, and the threat of set being potentially played out and maybe potentially dying kind of went in for this like bait play from Young Zera, understanding that he could just get another coin here, make Dr. Evander fully forget of like maybe keeping up Obliterator Fish, and has now this leeway of killing off one of the sea scarabs. And this might look okay, but like you dwindle down to a point of going deep. And even though suitably it looks like you got a decent trade off, one, you don't kill off the Maokai, and two, I don't know how deep we are, but if we do hit it, this is a boatload of damage coming through.
I almost want to say that maybe Yang was supposed to go after the Maokai.
Yeah, I feel like sure.
Oh
like,
wow! Oh wow! This
Wow.
Jettison top deck. Wow! What a hand!
I mean, I still think we do flip it because we could play one sea monster and then it's fine. But this allows you to just like 100% take away the set. Yang Zero doesn't actually have any play, and this is a board really worrying for him. You only have a palm, and sure that might block a lot of things, but that delays the inedible.
Coin buys drink or news.
How far is Maokai? Because we might have been like supposed to flip him so that it doesn't run into a sunburst. Yeah, like maybe it was
Right
correct
now,
to
yeah.
play the Abyssal. Maybe it was correct to play the Abyssal Eye and not care about the set, and then have the Jettison up so that if there's a sunburst, we just Jettison and the Maokai flips. But there is no sunburst anyway, so like this line always goes through and the Maokai will flip. And is this game over? Because like Yang just gets decked out, right?
It should be. Like, we just toss straight away. They don't really have anything to do. This hand is not nice, and they don't have karma. Like, and even if they had any of that, you can't really survive on this hand because double palm only gets you there somewhat, and then falling star. And you have to call it now. This will be game. The toss of the Jettison is activated. This will flip Maokai, discarding almost everything in Yang's deck that isn't a champion, and goes down to 4 cards in that deck. Has nothing to really work with in this hand besides delaying the Edwin. Yang knows it. Yang goes, hey, I'm out of this. I know how I'm losing this game, and it's not having cards. And we will be going into the next round after that.
Thank Yang Zera for being a smart guy and just choosing to scoop when that Maokai flipped. It saves up time, and it also makes it really funny because when you see a champion flip and your opponent scoop, especially when it's a Maokai and the animation is so visual, it makes for a much better experience.
And Yang Zero is also a person who doesn't like to fool around. He just goes, I know how I'm losing this game. I'm a smart player, and I'm as fast as possible. And yeah, we just saw that, knew that Maokai was kind of the ender for that game, and now we're into the next one. We've got quite a few nice things here for both players, but Dr. Evander really caring about threats and going straight for a defector line for turn 4.
Matchup is, I think, harder than the PNZ iteration of Karmaset is for Aatrox because the amount of hands that would get there when you don't have like the veins and the scouts. So like when you have Aatrox instead, it gets met like a lot more easily because of cards like Sunburst and Celestial Impact. It should still be a fine matchup because you are still going to be able to apply enough pressure throughout the course of the game, ideally, that it still makes it a little awkward for like the control deck to use their resources efficiently. But it's definitely like an outplayable matchup.
Hello? Hello? We just didn't swing with the 4/4? Are we just assuming Voa is...
No, he's playing around Falling Star.
Yeah, okay. Is that
Falling.
worth it, though?
I'm not sure. Maybe it's not, but that's definitely why they did that.
Is that the... Could you justify Yang Zero giving a question mark with not knowing why he did that? Maybe a tell on like Yang Zero's hand for maybe potentially not having Falling Star? Like, is that ever a consideration?
It is. I think it is, and I also think this swing is a massive pale bluff.
Yeah, Yang Zero kind of telling their hand, but even then, like, it is correct to do that because you want to be bluffing at points, and like, Dr. Vander might not even really want to be trading up into any others, especially because you could tell that Dr. Vander was like playing very, very what's the word? Very cautiously, and now his power is still going to be quite nice, and not only that, but I would say you would trade into things, but this catch has a capability to just sadly not be a reason for Yang to trade in.
Yeah, like these two Ranger Knights swinging will still be like decent pressure. I don't know if it's going to be enough down the line. It's going to be interesting to see how Yang Zera navigates this game because like you have in Yang Zera's hands the tools that you need to delay this game, especially given Dr. Evander's hand. There is no Vayne, which is a really important card in this matchup because it allows you to apply pressure with Tumble during your opponent's attack token, just like Rally basically. And without that, there is a lot of time gained for the control player. And also, there is a lack of equipment. So we are not that close to drawing our Aatrox, which is another thing that Yang Zera can benefit from, right? So, like, it becomes this kind of position where you have the time and the tools, but you need to still execute it right because the deck still is able to apply a decent amount of pressure without the access to either of your champions. So it depends on the navigation of the control player still.
Yeah, and like we were saying that, like, it's not really that bad for Yang, even though he'd been taking a lot of damage because of these neutralizing things like Set, and Dr. Vander just can't really do much. Like we might kind of play for this fish fight into form up. That is a line, and yeah, Dr. Vander does agree, and saying maybe it doesn't do much, I might take back my statement because unless this coin can really do anything else here and buff into tag out range, this will be a dead set, and this is exactly what Dr. Vander wants to see, leading out with tempo and trying to end it as fast as possible because you kind of have to with this hand.
What was Dr. Evander playing around when they decided to not form up the tracker and do the one-sided fish fight?
I think you just want the. I think you actually just want the 4-1. Like,
Argue you want the harp back because you want to play the harp on the 4-1 so that the 4-1 can swing with quick attack and not die.
right. I just think because now you can play the Broadwing, and do we have 3 mana after that set or 2 mana? Because we could have tagged out, right? Or am I tripping? Oh no, because of the tag out gave the extra coin, right? So
yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah.
right, and like Dr. Van is really trying to get there, but these stuns are actually just slowing everything down, like doing a huge impact here. This is slightly one off lethal too.
Yeah, it is. This spear, however, is not a bad draw at all.
Right. And Yang Zero can't actually pale anything and has to just kind of wait it out. Like, we have another set which might be nice, and then you could also sunburst in the same turn. So, like, there's still an option to definitely be okay, but Dr. Vander pulls out a Valor, which is another challenging unit, or can even a Naka here. Either of these are really good options.
Not enough mana for the Celestial Impact, and the Anaka is outside of Sunburst range. So this might.
Sorry, Hash, but can we actually get a showstopper here because of the place your bets?
It depends on how far Set is in the level up progression, right?
Right. Maybe if production helps, we can actually see this. And
no, Set is pretty far.
Off.
I think Set is pretty far, yeah. Because you play the 5 mana, and then you play the 1 mana, and then you're 2 off.
You need a draw into like pale.
Yeah, you need to draw into something. I think here as Dr. Evander, you slam the Anaka. You just have to.
Yeah. And I honestly think maybe that might be Yang's only out. Like the Tanaka and the Valor is exactly what they
Pass.
needed, but passes. Okay, this isn't too horrible. Like Yang is now going for this play and does find the pale here. So Dr. Evander actually passing might have been correct. Like now Yang Zero has to be like, oh, am I dealing this board? And if that is the case, Dr. Evander now actually has the backup here.
I mean, but okay, so you don't play the Anaka, you take this pass. So was this basically just to play around the showstopper?
I think so. Like I think Dr. Evander was just being very conservative of any potential play, and this is pushing 12. We have a healing here, but that only gets you to 6, and this
No,
tag
but there's
out
a tag out.
can
There's a
be
tag out.
played. So yeah, you are actually 2 off from lethal then. So Yang holding on to bare life of all this, removal and slow play as much as possible, and just howls it through. And Dr. Vander doesn't really have that hand to put any other amount of like opposing pressure now, and this might be exactly what Yang needed to get into this game.
I feel like we were in a good spot if we play the Anaka, because we play the Anaka, and then with the top deck of the Bloodletters, not only does it apply more pressure because it's a Bloodletters, it also draws us into Aatrox. And maybe it's true that Yang survives anyway, but I feel like we could apply pressure. Wait, what just happened?
Hello? Did he just play coin and then uh uh
Uh,
why do we coin there? And what
so we
Hello?
needed to play Star Shaping plus Tag Out, and we were fine, right?
Yeah, and then he coined, and then I think he drew, and he didn't realize that it could have survived.
Did Yang think his tag out was a Will of Ionia or something? Maybe that was the problem. I don't know.
Maybe I'm saying that we didn't actually just spot it. Yeah, I was just so reliant on Yang Zero just like doing what he had to do. Like Yang Zero is a player who doesn't really misplay on control, and like he just I don't know. I'm lost for words. Like just seeing these plays happen time by time.
Probably my theory is that game one was so insanely tilting that Yang Zero forgot how to play his deck.
Honestly, that might be it. Like Yang Zero is kind of just abided by like certain tilt, and probably went like, oh my goodness, he's got this really good start, and I'm just down. I'm down for the count, and maybe that was it. Just not realizing that you had an extra thing. Like I'm just saying we didn't see it earlier. Like that queen just being thrown out like that into another draw was not the business.
So Dr. Evander takes the set in very surprising fashion, and this gives Dusk Peddlers a better chance than they previously had to qualify for the play-ins. We also know that Ace from the Castaways, which is Young Zero's team, 2-0'd Grey Merchant, so whoever the last two players are on this team will be playing the decisive set at the moment, so we'll see how that goes. We're not sure exactly when that set is going to finish, and I think we're just gonna go on for a break and come back to you after that with our final set of the group stages, and it will be the collaborative set of the night. So stay tuned for that.
Each piece a reminder, every single little mistake. So how can I And every time I close my eyes, a little less of you remains. I know you're slipping further from me now. Am I too far away? Tell me why I won't ever feel the same. I'll try
Welcome back to the Aegis League. We have the final set of the group stages that we will be showing you guys on stream, and it is going to be a banger. Not only because these are two teams that are very good, but also because there is a lot at stake here. So, Annie, let's go through that. Who are we watching, and why is this so important?
Right. Well, we are actually watching a Group 1 match between TSP, also known as the Space Poggers, versus, Targon's Valley. Two pretty strong teams. And this is important because if Targon's Valley, doesn't actually win this, they have a chance to be knocked out. And which would be quite funny because at first they were bragging about how they went 3-0 in week 1 and this was all over. They were going to be the top of their group. And unfortunately, that isn't the case. They are almost going to be maybe knocked out if they don't get a win here for this collab set.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch, and like I can't imagine the amount of pressure, if any. Like I know that like Stalin is on that team, and Stalin is their pilot, and he's usually a very confident guy. But like this is a collaborative set, so there's more than one person doing the things, and at the same time, it's a decisive set. And we've seen collaborative sets get very intense. The one we had last week technically didn't even finish; it just went to time.
And
So with that
it,
kind of stress, I wonder how it's gonna go.
yeah, and like even with that collab set last week, which is a little reminder of it was Church of Targon versus Marlin, and Marlin won on time because it just gets to a really high stress environment. But the thing is, Church of Targon actually could have won that game. They had the Wuju into it was a 2-shot barrage, and when it's getting down to that very close wire of just those final seconds, you miss things like that, and in an environment of people just thinking like, "Oh, we gotta go, we gotta go," it gets enforced. You miss stuff, and it goes all over the place. And when I think of Valley and the people in that team, I feel like there's a lot of struggle in communication. I feel like you have Dragon, who's a very communicative person, but also he talks a lot, and and I know from VCs, maybe he might go over people, and Conch is a very enforced person of like giving out like, oh, this is a good play, let's do that. So I can see maybe that dynamic might be a struggle. And then on the other hand, you have the team Space Poggers, which is a very calm bunch. If I'm thinking so, like you have Hawk, you have Mechanical, you have James, and you have Filthy Gamer Web, which is like almost an embodiment of just being calm.
It's a very chilled out team. Filthy Gamer Weeb, often regarded as one of the players who are extremely good at this game. Like there was a point in time where you could make a solid argument for Filthy Gamer Weeb to be the best player on the AM server back in the TF Fizz days. And it will be very interesting to see these two teams pilot the collaborative sets with each other. I think the main takeaway, regardless of what we see today, is that going into future seasons of Aegis, if we have any, you need to be as a team prepared to have a plan going into the collaborative set. Because if you just try to say, oh, it's going to be 4 dudes on a VC trying to figure out what to do, or sorry, maybe it's 3, I'm not sure if you're allowed to have all 4 players of the team, that will lead to time trouble. And that time trouble will often lead you to lose EV. So you need to have some form of plan when that happens.
Yeah, and like I knew way back in the day when backseating was actually a format. It started, I'm pretty sure in LBR, and the thing with like the Hydra players, I'm pretty sure they didn't actually have a multitude of people, going over plays. They had very specific roles. They had one person kind of hand tracking. They had one person actually, giving out this idea of a play, and then I'm pretty sure they had a person just kind of proofreading that play and making sure it was good. And when you do stuff like that, it becomes more organized, and you get a more refined way of kind of tackling this idea of a format, and you kind of lead off with a very healthy mindset of like, how are we going to approach this, and it leads to better games and potential more success.
Yeah, getting used to each other is also a really important part of the process. Moving on to the decks, we see Fist Samira for the first time today, which is kind of crazy because not too long ago, this was the deck. It was everywhere.
Yeah, and it's kind of a staple for Filthy Gamer Weeb. We kind of talked about him a tiny bit as being recognized as a tier Fizz player, but also arguably maybe one of the most talented players you can get from Runeterra who doesn't even play. This person will go, 6 months without playing the game and top cuts and even gets like top four. This person is super talented and he loves, decks like this. A bit of a different list. Dashing Dandy is kind of a weird tempo play for it, and being very heavy on these one drops. So almost like a mismatch of potential things here. Just kind of jumping around deck list. I'll still talk about Filthy Gamer League because it's still fresh on my mind, and it was like you don't really run Shelly anymore, all these burbles, so you've kind of opted out for this more aggressive game plan. And
Mhm.
now, yeah, you don't have this elusive, and you're still going for a similar idea. It's just being more pressure heavy in the early game.
Yeah, you are now what Fist Samira was supposed to be. You're not a combo aggro deck, you're an aggro combo deck. You're a lot more similar to Nightfall than you are to a Nami deck from back in the day. And that is a lot more appealing to a lot of people, and also a lot healthier because it's a lot more counterable. And it's a lot more fun to watch because now it's a powder pandemonium deck almost exclusively, and having a bunch of monkeys destroy your opponent is a beautiful sight to see.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like, you kind of ran into this problem of, people exploiting with elusives, and now it's what it should be of just like a pandemonium deck. And we're into something that is, something that is always there and here, and that is Jace Heimer. He really gets out of the sides of the meta, and you are running pretty stable cards. You've got Soul Harvest, you've got all your Shock Blast of Vengeance, and a one of Pharos. Just for, any top end that kind of holds the stick a lot more than it used to.
Yeah, Heimer has been a staple for a year now. I almost say this every time we see this. Soul Harvest is a great tool. I also said that last week. I'm going to keep saying it because that card is nuts. We did see some changes. There were some Heimer Jace lists going around that cut the entire turret package and just played Heimer as kind of a follower. Space Pugger's not opting for that, staying with the more classical build, playing the handlers, playing the production surge. It makes sense. There is no assembly line, which is kind of a card that I really enjoy in this meta because it does a really good job at blocking down Vandal City decks. Maybe it's not what they were looking for lineup purpose wise. I think the 2 copies of Shock Blast is really nice as well, though. It makes a lot of sense because most of the units that come down at turn 3 have 3 HP, so it ends up being a very efficient piece of removal, especially with a Chase on 4 when you have the attack token on that turn. And Piercing Darkness is doing exactly what you need to be doing for when it comes to removal in this meta because it's a very aggressively slanted meta. So the drain is really powerful.
And we'll probably head into the next deck now to just kind of round out what this lineup is. And it is a Tristana deck that we're kind of talking about, it seems like being good into. And this looks really standard and very typical from a bring from Filthy Game League for Team Space Poggers. It just bring the free best decks because we're going to outplay you with them. And even though collab sets kind of change it, a strong just foundation of bringing things into something potentially less powerful can just like overcome their opponents. So maybe that's what Team Space Focus is doing today.
Yeah, this deck is going to be safe and reliable, and it's going to do what you want it to do. It's just good old Bandle Swarm with some decent top end. I really like the scrap heaps. Like, I don't know if they're correct. I don't know if they're good, but I just really like that I'm going to be seeing Mecha Yordles, hopefully, if this deck doesn't get banned, because I really enjoy the scrap heap play patterns. I was a massive Lulu Jinx enjoyer back in the day, and like Lulu PNZ in general was one of the best decks for me personally when it came to enjoyment, and Scrap Heap was such a pivotal part of that deck. If you ask the Tank Buster about this deck, about this card, he will say that Smash on Dash on turn 3 is the best play any deck can ever do. And he's not always, he's not entirely wrong about that. They are very strong, highly statted units that have pretty powerful effects that can be very game winning in some spots.
Yeah, and it's like talking about the scrap dash quickly. It was kind of a list that was popularized by Infinity, who is rank 1 time to time, but stat wise, it is actually the worst performing deck. So it's pretty funny, even though the top 1 contender does have that as being his list, been kind of gaining games out of it. It doesn't actually, on paper or stat wise, do well, but we are into something really nifty here, and it is a type of aggro, Samira Jinx. It might look a bit weird, but don't be fooled. This kind of brings back this discard package and overperforms with it sometimes because you can kind of swarm out and get a lot of damage early.
Yeah, this deck has made a resurgence recently. It was kind of around a little bit when Samira initially came out, but people decided she was way too broken to be thrown in with Jinx, which was honestly probably fair. But since this deck has shown up, I have been extremely impressed by it. It has the ability to go long, similar to how Draven Jinx used to. It has the ability to be explosive in a similar way because, like, quite frankly, it's the same region combination. It makes sense. You play Vision, it's the same idea. You abuse Crimson Vision, which is one of the best cards in the game, with the Flame Chompers, which is also a very strong card because it allows you to get in with that pigeon instead of it getting blocked, which is what usually happens. And then the 3 copies, in this case, the 2 copies of Augmented Experimenter, but also the 3 copies of Rummage mean that you can actually go pretty late for an aggro deck. You don't just get gassed out as quickly as something like Spider aggro used to back in the day, right? So yes, a deck with a lot of potential, and I'm very excited to see how it's piloted under the hands of someone like Filthy Gamer Weep, who is a very good player on these kinds of decks.
It is Tygon's Valley actually, so
Oh,
it will
whoops.
be.
Okay, I'm having a
But
bit of a moment. I apologize.
But I mean, saying that though, if it's piloted by Stolen Conch, who is a enjoyer of decks like this, we will probably see
true.
some really intense plays. Like, Stolen Conch loves Jinx, and Samira Jinx is kind of this thing that can kind of do a lot of cool stuff. You have the Samira challenge on potential play, and if you look for these, high tempo plays, you just get through with 8 damage, and you can follow up with this burn. I actually played Samira, Scion, not so long ago, and I felt like the thing that was missing was just a reliable burn and potential refill, and Jinx is the perfect answer to that, and it makes sense why you would bring something like this and why it's finally doing well.
Moving on to the last deck, we finally see an Aatrox list. We haven't seen this for a while, right? There's no way we've seen this deck here any recently. Any recently. I've never seen this deck. What does it do? Yeah, tell me, what does this deck do? I've never seen it before.
I don't know. Like, I don't think I've seen these exact 40 cards for almost a whole month on every list. This can't be happening. I think Broadwing is a bird and it flies, and then you have trackers, and then they fly, and then you have Clins, and then they also fly, and then boom, you're at a park. Yep, that's what that's what this deck does. It's actually just like not a deck; it's a whole environment.
Yeah. There is not much that I haven't already said about this deck. It's very good, all reliable Aatrox.
Good
On to this
producer
deck
just
again.
going past knows that there's nothing really to talk about that, and good thing because I can't really come up with another weird joke about environments and him and birds, and we run into a multiple menagerie of things like yodels and another amount of just swarm basically because this is what this deck is, and very similar to Filthy Gamers list, but you're not running those scrap heaps.
Yeah, this is again a list that does the reliable stuff that you expect Tristana Bilgewater deck to do. We've already said, the most flexible of the 3 iterations of the deck, and that makes sense because of the multi-usage of Price Fight. I think one thing I would say as a critique maybe is that I've seen some of these lists even earlier today play 1 copy of Teemo instead of 3 copies of Gnar, and I really feel like Gnar is a really, really good card in this deck, and you want to be playing 3.
Yeah, I think like the only justification or like maybe thing to say is like, oh, I might want to 1-drop, but the deck kind of works in a way where you're just holding out for those high power players and high kind of swarm players that you don't really need that 1-drop. And so I can see the justification for Gnar, especially being able to generate a rotated card out like Pokey. So it makes sense to keep. But what are you thinking about these bans right now?
Very interesting and also a little bit complicated because I'm not complicated for me personally because I'm not too familiar with the Samira Jinx matchup tables. But looking at it visually, I think so. Targon's Valley is not banning Samira Fizz. They're either banning Heimer Jace or the Tristana deck. I think they're banning the Tristana deck because I don't think Space Poggers is supposed to ban Samira Jinx. And Samira Jinx would, I think, rather play into Heimer Jace than play into Tristana Bulgewater, as weird as that sounds. Because typically the control deck is supposed to beat the aggro deck. But I actually think Samira Jinx has more chances into Heimer than it does into Tristana. And then from the other side, Space Poggers, I think it's an Aatrox ban. What do you think, Annie?
I would say I honestly was thinking maybe the Vandal Gunners ban, but I can see the Aatrox ban because I was thinking, oh, Hyman Jace isn't too bad into it, and then I guess you kind of struggle with the Samira Fizz, so I guess you could justify the Aatrox getting banned and be decently fine. But my thought process was honestly, I don't really care about like what I'm banning unless it's not Jinx Samira because that's the one that I want to try and beat.
Man,
You
I'm
see the
such a
bans here.
genius. I'm such a genius, man. Look at me. I'm so smart and so handsome. We got the right bands once again.
Yeah, and those are the bands that you did say. And my thought process was honestly, I'm just gonna be trying to go onto Samira and Jinx as best as possible and try and protect this idea of like how I'm gonna do that, right? Because like we always go through what might be the best bands and the basis of what each of us is gonna ban. And I feel like Team Space Foggers were in a position where that's all they're really targeting, and they feel like either one could be fine for the reciprocal of that ban.
Absolutely. Looking forward to how these games go. So we start off with the Samira Fizz from Space Pogger's side, playing against Timo Tristana Gnar Bilgewater from Targon Valley's side. This matchup is theoretically supposed to be a little bit Samira favored because just of the way the Tristana deck wants to develop and stay on the board to have engines like Grandfather Faye and Mayor on the board at an early point in the game so that they can gain incremental value as you go along the game. A card like Samira deals with that very efficiently, right? Because of Flare, and especially because Flare keeps coming back. So I expect Space Poggers to be a little comfortable here, but it's not overwhelmingly favored, so anything can happen.
Right, and Team Space Foggers, pretty decent hand when you have double Samira. Sure, like you might not have much going with it, but it will start popping off when you get this Inferno down. And Targon's Valley has some leeway to get back into it though if anyone is committed through the Samira. Because of the prize fight and group shot, this will make things a bit nicer, but right now playing it very slow and kind of has to when you have Samira on the board just threatening this idea of a challenger.
Yeah, this open pass is excellent. It's almost exactly what you need to be doing as the Samira player in this matchup. Just choke their mana, make it hard for them to develop stuff, and punish them for developing, because not only will you remove their units, you will just naturally progress your own game plan while doing that. And that's going to be really, really hard to deal with long term.
Yeah, and like honestly, Targon's Valley passing there might seem incorrect, but you kind of have to because of that challenger. And like we were saying, it's going to progress our own game plan, and this might allow us to play Inferno. And if you get Inferno down, now your whole hand is looking like Source. You've got a major amount of things that can happen, and Tigon's Valley doesn't have much stuff to do besides prize fight, but this prize fight isn't really doing anything unless you get down this Alcat, because then it can finally try and, dwindle down some damage on that Inferno if they go for that.
Yeah, so you have some options here as Targon's Valley, but I'm not too enthused by any of them. I think the way we're supposed to try to approach this game is take it slow and hope to draw into an improvised unit eventually. And then Tristana with like a scout or an overwhelm equipment can potentially be explosive enough to get there. But for now, Space Progress is doing a good job at holding the fort down and making sure that not much damage is being taken.
Right. Okay, so we're kind of in the spot where we've got a lot of stuff we should be doing. What do you really think the best play might be? Is it just fizz into like Starless and then see how it goes from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the point in the game for the Samira player where you don't really care about your opponent's game plan anymore because you're at a turn where you have enough mana to present everything you need to present, and you also have the pirouette at this point to punish any potential developments on the following turn. So you just say, I will start playing my deck, and by the next attack token, I'm going to try and set up a lethal against you. And there are good chances that that ends up working out. Looking at the both players' hands, there will be some delay to the plan just because of the ability of Targon's Valley to remove Samira with this group shot, buster shot, and prize fight, depending on what combination they go for exactly. But I don't expect it to be too much of a trouble for Space Progress here.
And they do just, make it conservative, take out the Bandle and push a bit of damage. Like, you can do this with Samira Fizz, just enforce this idea of Starless Shot with Fizz as much as you can, and it will eventually get there. Targon's Valley now takes away this Samira, but I got news for you. We got another one in hand, and Targon's Valley doesn't actually have 4 units, so they can't just openly group shot, but says, I'm probably going to level this up instead, keeps us at 1 here with the other all out, and flips it. What do you think about this play if they commit through it? Otherwise, they'll probably just level it.
I think you just let the Samira level and then you let the Buster Shot resolve. I don't think you play the all out. You just let it go.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense because, again, it's what I said earlier about this like 2-turn clock where you're trying to present lethal on your next attack token. So by flipping the Samira, you make it way easier to do so.
Yeah, I completely agree. There is no actual real reason to keep it at 1. Only if maybe you wanted another Plunder proc, but it just doesn't really make that much sense. So keeping the Samira healthy and allowing it to level makes things super, super awkward now for Targon's Valley because they have to now try and deal with a second Samira. While if they could rally, it gets really, really awkward because there might be a ton of damage potentially coming through for a multitude of just like open attacks into like a potential lethal with the next round or so.
Yeah. Oh wow, we drew the warning shot. That's really clean. That's
Not
really
only do you
clean.
get the warning shot, but you also get the Starless shot. Talking about just ultimate amount of damage here. But we passed question mark.
Wait, what? we just didn't use the fleeting warning shot. Okay, hold on. I don't know what kind of. I don't know what kind of pilot Filthy Gamer Weeb is, but if this was stolen con, she would do this on purpose, just to mentally damage her opponent.
And we just missed 1 damage, but maybe it was just like, oh wait, that's right, I actually plunder from that, and I just forget. And Targon's Valley just doing all they can to kind of really develop, and what they want to do now is they want to pressure as much as possible so the opponent feels like they're forced to block their high valued unit. But I'm looking right now, and I don't think that is really the case. You could go all the way down to, almost like 8 health here and you're perfectly fine. Like, they can kind of just start playing with their own hand, and they even be a bit respectful here and just keep pushing as much damage as they can and getting value from this Inferno.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the thing with the non-Noxus iterations of Tristana. They will present a lot of damage, but they often won't present 20. And as long as they're not presenting 20, you can take it. And you can just kill them on the crackback. Because they don't have nearly as much reach as the Mites and the Fervors and the Noxus version. There is still a sizable amount, but it's not enough to threaten you consistently to make blocks that you would be unhappy making, if that makes sense. And the access to tools like Pirouette from the Samira side into a deck like this makes it way harder for them to push through and put you on a clock before you end up blowing them out with Samira.
Oh, 100%. And like the only way you can really do that or like push that damage through is with Tristana prize fight. And it's just in such an awkward position because you might need to try and do something hasty like prize fight into group shot just when you put down the Samira. Like the Samira is going to make things so awkward where you have to represent it, and even then, you're forking them in a position where you're just pushing a lot more damage through. Like we have 6 damage on board. We have another pretty sure Starler Shot that we did use, unfortunately. So we have 8 and then 9. We can kind of get through there, and like even next turn if we draw something nice here.
Yeah, I would be relatively surprised if we somehow don't manage to finish them off next turn with the 12 damage. It'll be interesting to see because there is a little bit of counterplay. Like, this Samira comes down here, and we can kill her here, right? We can play the prize fight and the group shot.
Yeah, so that is a play. It depends if they misplay somehow. Like if they do it on the 3-2, you can actually kill off the grandfather. By fight. Oh no, because the group shot happened. Never mind, I'm just crazy. No, this does work out. If you did like randomly pre-commit the swindle, then you might have had some weird play around. But Targum was only being as smart as they can, and they even get a pokey stick from it. So we were talking about quite a bit of damage, and it's not exactly there. However, Space Walkers does get another flare from that as well, so pretty funny as an interaction.
Yeah, I feel like there was an argument to use a barb chain there, just to like draw into like Powder Pandemonium or All Out or just more cards that deal damage to the Nexus. Because I do feel like you are on a clock. Okay, there is the Powder Pandemonium, so this should be a walk in the park.
Yeah, talking about Powder Pandemonium, this should probably be what you want here. Like, at least 3 Plunder procs happen, that's 3 damage. You have another 4 on this Fizz and Inferno. Let's just assume that this 2-1 is dying. That's 4, Starter Shot is 5. This is still fine as well. You can do it after being conservative, and then you have another 2. That will be lethal right now. The Pokestick comes out though. So,
I mean, the Pokestick comes down. So it presents 4 damage. You have the Swindle, and you take their Pokestick because it's 1 damage. You draw into a Stylish, which is another 1 damage. This should be lethal.
We stop playing faster. Please, Team Seasmokers. I mean, this is the second time they don't wait for their Inferno. We could have definitely just Starless Shot there. Like, we get it through and we can probably get another amount of damage as well. But
yeah,
nonetheless, this should be exactly lethal. Like, because we get +4 off this powder, plus the double flare into the pokey, and this is lethal. So, deterministically, it doesn't matter. You could say on the basis of optimability, it does, but they know how they're playing for this game, and there they have it. Powder Pandemonium comes out and just going to be waiting on the stack of damage, and it will be an unslightly ping damage amount of lethal here, and Team Space Poggers takes it for round 1.
Yeah, and this is a risky territory for Targon's Valley. They started the league really strong with a 3-0 week one, but now they are one game away from potentially not even making it through to the next stage. And it just shows you how a short season can turn around really quickly. You need to be very consistent.
Right. And saying that though, like if you do get that 3-0, it does put you very ahead, but you just need that tiny bit about a bit of amount to like get through there to like fully secure it, right? So if you hit 5 wins, it almost guarantees you, I'm pretty sure, mathematically. But the thing is, like, when you verse the same players over and over again, they catch on. And if you can't really adapt, you're going to be kind of losing to those later leagues. And that's what happened. Targon Valley hasn't really adapted, and the opponents have kind of taken advantage of that. And Team Spacebog is being ahead and trying to just show why they are ahead of Targon Valley with this next game, hopefully, and see if they can take it.
Yeah, let's see how this goes. There's a good there's a chance that this is Targon's Valley's very last set. It's going to be, and if it is, it's going to be Heimer Jess that will stop them. And I am actually not entirely sure about how this matchup is supposed to go. Do you have any idea, Annie?
I think just on the basis of like constant swarm threads, the Bandle Gunner's swarm deck might be favored. I'm not too sure statistically wise, but I can also see like Hyman Jace being okay because like the problem with Targon's Valley is if they don't really find this group shot or these double prize fights, but they do have the pie toss, they wouldn't really have an interaction for the strays, and you can kind of run with the game, right? So if they don't have those cards, it gets a bit iffy. But we know right now on the hand they've got some leeway, and leeway might be all you need here for the later stages of this game.
Yeah, I definitely think Space Poggers have a pretty nice hand here. There's a handler, so they will be able to apply pressure once Heimer is drawn. There's a Jace, which will allow them to control the board. There's a Piercing Darkness, which is the best stabilizer in these kinds of matchups. And there is also Formula to make sure that even after we use all of these cards, we will be drawing into more. So there's a chance that this game goes really, really long. And the hands that both players have demand them to take their time, right? Because as mentioned, there are a lot of expensive spells in the Heimer Jace hand, and then on the other side there is a Vandal Gunners and there is a King's Court as well. So we're gonna be here for a good amount of time.
And Team Space Focus just says, hey, I'm going to play out this Jace because I know you can't really deal with it much. But the problem with this block here is this prize fight just absolutely demolishes this Jace. Like another thing of prize fight being a card with multiple ways of it, being resourceful is you don't even need an additional like card to kind of ping something off. You can just do it in mid combat, and Space Poggers puts Jason to jeopardy here, especially with a reliable chance of doing this, especially if they tap out. Regardless, though, they could have done that on the spell shield as well, and here it goes.
Yeah, the only difference is here you're doing it on you're tapping to one mana, so you can do it on the unit with impact, and it's one more damage. We decide to go for this line to preserve our board. To be honest, I'm not against this. I think it makes some amount of sense.
I think with the hand of of it being very, very limited is kind of what you have to do, and then you also still have that prize fight for another threat, and like Team Space Poggers hasn't really gone for any 6-cost cards, so these handlers aren't really doing much, and it might get to a point where sure these handlers might not do much and you can't really get through, but based on Targon's limitations, it might just give him enough time to, get to that turn 7 or get to that turn 6 of like just playing these threats like Bandle Gunners.
Yeah, this is the kind of position where like something like an assembly line would be massive, right? Like extremely, extremely good in that kind of position.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you didn't need a force pass there, but we do get a production surge, so it is a pseudo type of assembly line. But saying that as well, like Targon's Valley top deck is amazing. Maya is like the perfect card you wanted here because we're talking how it was a bit limited, and this allows you to not only get more units on the board, but tiny bit more value out of this limited hand.
Yeah, I think. Huh. This is a really interesting spot. So like I really like how like the optics of this game changed really quickly. Heimer looked like it had the tools, and then suddenly you look at the position now, and suddenly like the Heimer hand looks a lot clunkier than it seemed at the beginning.
I think like they're still in a pretty decent position though because of this production surge. Because like
Yes.
then again, you just look at like Valley and it's like, oh, my deck is all about like units, but if they get chumped, then I'm not doing that great. And if I get these Hex State handlers on, it's pretty good for them. So I do like how this is actually going for Space Boggers, even though it looked very kind of concerning last round.
I do agree. Like the ability to jump block for a long time is going to help out the Heimer player a lot, and like as well that coupled with the fact that there's a second handler coming down, maybe it transitions into a phase of the game where the Heimer player becomes the aggressor all of a sudden, uh, and that will be a problem for the kind of hand Targon's Valley has right now, because you will be forced to block, and as you can see, you don't have as much refill as a Bandle City deck normally does. There is a Bandle commander that's going to come down and generate an Owlcat this turn, most likely, as long as there is no elusive.
Oh
Never mind, there's an
wow!
elusive. But this is not a good outcome. This is a pretty bad
No.
outcome, actually, because now you just play a Bandle Commando into group shot, and it's a full swing from there, right?
This was the only thing that could go south for Space Boggers. You might have wanted, 2 extra units there, but unfortunately, only rolling the elusive allows Valley to kind of, ping that off and just go at it here, post as much damage as they want, and now they're also so ahead with this pressure that playing King's Court or just waiting it out for them to kind of Team Space Buggers to kind of tap under a removal spell, King's Court gets kind of a lot of value.
Yeah, this is a game turned upside down just because of a production surge going extremely wrong, right? Like we see the third handler here, but look at the life total and look at the mana that the Heimer Just player has. It's
And
yes, there is like a piercing darkness, but it's gonna be really, really hard to find room to resolve it without making a big tempo sacrifice that ends up to you taking the damage you are draining anyways.
yeah, and it's like sure you get that third one and you might finally be able to like trade somewhat more effectively, but the court just comes into the game state. And like as the court kind of comes into the game state, that's the ball in their hands. That is now them leading it. And I mean, you're still, I think, I would say all right if you could maybe top deck something, but if you don't have a vengeance on site, is this open just lethal? It isn't, but it's close, right? It's just like one off plus that, and them actually have to developing here gives Team Space Buggers a chance now. I'm pretty sure you get to actually play the 7-drop, the center spell champ that barely sees any play. It removes a unit off the board and -2s to everything, and this is almost perfect. Like, sure, they can deal with it, but it does neutralize some damage at least.
Yeah, the name of the card is Dawning Shadow, Annie, in case you were
Oh,
trying to
okay.
find the name. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm all about
yeah.
being optimistic. I'm never in the shadows. I'm always in the light.
Oh God. Well, moving on with the game, because Annie's here making jokes. So yeah, the Dawning Shadow isn't that bad, but we still have Nar into Bandle Gunners and 2 prize fights. Is this lethal? Because you like play the Bandle Gunners, you swing with the Bandle Gunners, and you prize fight twice. This is just lethal,
Oh,
right?
true. It actually might be. Yeah, no, that is actually lethal. think Dawning Shadows might have been, the savior and the grace of getting back into it, but it isn't. They just had too much pressure, and this is why Prize Fight gets, the recognition it does in a list like this. You want the impact damage, and this will be game. Targon's Valley
Yeah.
actually ties it up, and these double prize fights shows their worth, and just Team Space Poggers couldn't really get through here at all.
Yeah, this is a very good showcase of how strong the Bilgewater deck is, right? It felt like, although the production surge only hit one unit, which was the Elusive, which was very swingy, but regardless, it felt like Heimer didn't have an awful hand. It was okay. The tools were there. You drew like a couple of Mystic Shot effects. You had the Piercing Darkness, which was coming down the line. You had two Jaces. You had a Handler. You had Formula to keep refueling. But the Bilgewater Tristana deck is so tempo focused and so efficient at presenting threats because of like the mana you get to cheat with Bandle Gunners and Mayor that like it is just able to present enough tempo and make it really awkward for Heimer Jace.
Yeah. And now we are back into the last match of the day. This will be the decider here. And we kind of talked about it before. This Jinx deck might be slightly nice into the Heimer Jace, just because Heimer Jace has a really weird way of like trying to balance between, removing and developing, right? And you kind of have to commit to one, otherwise you're in this weird spot of Tygon maybe taking advantage, and a deck like that can be very temper oriented, and that's what they brought. They brought something that might be able to exploit it.
So traditionally speaking, into these kinds of aggressively started decks, the cards that like were really good in Heimer Jace, like outside of the self-explanatory ones, like the engine of like the turrets and production surge, just because like they help you block really well, are Piercing Darkness and Heimer. Now, Piercing Darkness is still going to be good in this matchup, provided you get far enough to the point where you can play it. Heimer, on the other hand, isn't as good as it used to be because Augmented Experimenter, in response to a Heimer, unless Heimer comes down on exactly turn 5, makes it pretty awkward for the Heimer player, simply because the likelihood of the Targon's Valley player to have the removal for the Heimer after putting it down to 1 HP is really likely. And then you have refuel and you keep going from there. So it's not that great.
And Targon's Valley probably would have liked the discard hand. Like, Rummage as a top deck would be so nice here. It's like, you would just be in such a nice spot. And I was going to say maybe Space Poggers might actually just, like, pack with a 2-on, just, like, maybe not get punished, but Rummage is a top deck, being able to put the visions on the chompers down, and this changes everything. Mystic and High Note does stop some of this, but this is still super impactful. You get at least 6 damage through here, and your refill is looking quite nice after that.
Yeah, and this is what I meant when I was talking about the ability of this deck to go long. Like, look at this. We just went 6 wide, swung, taxed 2 resources out of our opponents and 2 blockers that traded down, and our hand still has both of our champions and a Sump Dredger, which is going to draw us more cards down the line.
It just like it looks insane because now you can actually just play the Samira, and this Jace, even though might be able to trade through it, you're just like constantly developing here. You have also another Rummage.
Wow.
Like, that is absolutely insane here. Sun Dredger with these double chompers will make the board almost so threat heavy that I'm pretty sure this is actually just lethal if they didn't have the Vengeance. And like, even then, you are put onto a lethal standpoint after that as well.
How this turn goes, there's a decent chance that this game is over next turn, which is insane. Like like you normally when an aggro deck wins on turn 6, it's swarmed you with 1-drops and it attacks and it wins. and it has no cards in
Right.
hand. If we
And
win
like,
next turn, we will still have like a full hand.
so we could actually hold on a second. I wonder if we might not even need anything else. Like, if we flare here, they kill off our Samira, which let's say hypothetically they do. That's 2 damage. We get to pull the Jace. The Vengeance come down on the Crimson. You're pushing 6 damage. That's 8. You're 1 off that way. So you are 1 off, but like then you just have Jinx. So this is looking really scary, and I don't think you really have time for a Samira. For like a piercing darkness, and this flare is going to get so much value of the Samira dying to the point where like you're just absolutely chilling here, and that puts Space Fog is in a very jeopardized spot of like just dying.
Yeah, I'm not sure how good this Samira Jinx deck is, but it's doing its best at being really impressive right now. Like, look at how powerful this is. It's incredible, right? Oh my god! And the augmented experiment. What a
How many
hand by
cards can you
Tarkov
just have?
Valley.
And then they'll go, they do push for the lethal here. Vengeance does come out. This does stop it from now, but it's looking close. I wonder if Jinx can kind of get through here with like, there's no way we can level Jinx right now, right? There's like,
No, we're always short. Even if we're always like 2 mana short here, unfortunately. So there will be a piercing darkness, in fairness. So maybe we can stabilize, but it only drains 5 because you technically can't get doubled. So it's not a great position to be in still for space poggers. And yeah, we see the Rummage come down here to draw 2 cards. Digging for Mystic Shot, I suppose, and
and
there it
here it
is.
is. Mystic
Wow,
is the
wow.
way to win. Val isn't in the game, and Targon's Valley does take it. This means that they are going to players with a potential to maybe lose. They say, no, that's not going to happen. This brings this brings this Samira Jinx deck to the tournament out of kind of nowhere and just absolutely steamrolls Team Space Poggers for just a victory and a very beautiful one at that. Playing well, it was the hand was kind of easy to play out, but what a game to kind of wrap up things.
The first thing I want to do after we finish this broadcast is jam some games of that deck, because my god, that looked so fun. That looked so incredibly fun to play, and I was so entertained by today's sets, especially this one. Like, what a way to end. Targon's Valley had to win on demand. Technically not on demand, because there was a way for them to qualify even if they lost, but this guarantees safety for them, which is incredible. And the way they did it was amazing. It was such a great watch.
Yeah, and like even though Team Space Poggers did lose, it means that they are still going to play-ins as well. It was more of a, are we just trying to beat Targon's Valley so they like might not have a chance and maybe bless someone's playoffs picks, their group picks. Which if you didn't know, there was Aegis group picks at the start of the season that gets a free entry. So you should also look out for stuff like that because Red is a charitable person giving out free entry. but besides that, they did pretty well overall, and an update is Showstoppers did lose. So even if Targon Valley did lose as well, they were making play-ins, and
Yeah.
that would be the wrap for Group 1. And what a great 3 weeks of games, Hash.
Yeah, we saw some really exciting games, and I feel like today we saw. I want to say, like, congratulations to Targon's Valley and Space Puggers for being very like. I don't know how well they did this internally, but from it looked like from the outside they looked very organized in the collaborative set in comparison to the previous 2 we saw the last couple of weeks, and uh, that just is a lot more satisfying to watch, right? Because you would always rather see a game of LOR finish fair and square than go to timer, unfortunately. And it's good to see that these teams are doing well in collaborative.
Yeah, I'm just so happy that that game was just so fast. So we didn't have, a potential four timer. Like, the main reason why I was probably so happy about that game was just literally because it went fast. Like, oh yeah, Samiro Jinx is there. Probably gonna, do some justice. Either it loses fast or it wins fast. And uh, time scenarios are scary because, like, even if that time scenario happens and it is, an ethical way, people are maybe always going to be like, oh, maybe there is a way of like that not being justifiable, or, or it's controversial. But glad that didn't happen. And yeah, just a fair game of Valley showing it and being very organized, like you said, in the team set.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that will wrap it up for all of the group stage games in this season's Aegis League. Next week, we're going to have the play ins, which is kind of a tournament style format where every team that finishes second and third in their respective groups, which will be a total of 16 teams, will participate in a 1 day tournament style event to determine which 8 of them are going to qualify for playoffs. And I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I won't be around to cast next week, but I'm sure Annie will be accompanied by someone really good to replace me because I deserve that kind of replacement, you know. And yeah, it was a blast this week. I think that wraps it up.
Sweet. Well, with that, that's probably, yeah, the end of week 3. So we'll be seeing you next week. I will be accompanied by someone else that isn't, John Wick from home, and we'll see you all then. So catch you everyone later.